It's the reunion from hell as Peter Parker is once again forced to confront demons from his past. What'll happen next? Well, let's hop into the pages of Amazing Spider-Man issue number 55 and find out together, shall we? Alrighty then, so picking up directly from where the Last Remains tie-in left off, Spider-Man, along with the other Warriors of the Web, have once again been taken captive by Kindred in his crypt. Harry Osborn once again goes on a very villainous, very meta tirade about how once upon a time Spider-Man didn't have time for anyone else in his life, but now every time he turns around there's a new Spider-Person. Kindred thinks out loud that maybe if Peter Parker has never been allowed to have a true full family, perhaps that's why Spider-Man keeps trying to create one. Granted, Spider-Gwen shuts him down by saying none of them asked permission. The true Texas Chainsaw style dinner can't happen yet, as Harry is still waiting for the guest of honor, Mary Jane Watson, who again, if you've been reading the Last Remain books, you'll know has also been working with Harry's father, Norman. At first, it seemed like Osborn the Sr. had actually shaken off his villainous ways after his run-in with the Sin Eater, but now that doesn't seem so sure anymore. Peter, after seeing that his wife is the central piece in Harry's mad revenge plot, is so enraged he manages to break his bonds and go about attacking Kindred once again. Unfortunately, he fares about as well against Kindred as he has been all throughout this arc. He starts off strong enough, punching through his ghost bug-like head, but Kindred is quickly able to reform himself. Whatever mastery over life and death Kindred seems to have, it's continuing to give him a real edge in his battle against Spider-Man. It's Mary Jane who actually has probably the smartest idea of all, and that is if they can't beat Kindred right now, maybe they should just play into his insanity and give him the creepy Texas Chainsaw style dinner he wanted so they can buy themselves some time. And indeed, it's not long before Harry is waxing poetically about the good old days in college when Peter, Mary Jane, and he were inseparable and it looked like the world was their oyster. And because Nick Spencer has proved that he has an encyclopedic knowledge of Spider-Man lore, not only does he include actual panels from those issues, but we're also given the number of the issue as well. It's here too we're reminded that before Peter and Mary Jane were an item, Mary Jane and Harry had actually dated, and he says that in many ways when she left him for Peter, it was the beginning of his problems. Which Peter actually takes some rather interesting offense to. Peter will own up to a lot of his past sins, but he doesn't see him getting with Mary Jane as one of them. He's also really offended at the idea that this is what's still eating Harry up after all these years, that the spoiled rich kid is still angry about the one time in his life he didn't totally get his way and get the girl. Harry fires back though, saying that if they want to talk the worst things they've ever done to each other, the cake has to be taken by Peter knowing full well that Harry's father Norman was a supervillain but never telling him. Peter maintains that he was trying to save Harry from the truth and that knowing what his father truly was would have destroyed him as a human being. Then again, Harry fires back saying that maybe the only reason he never told Harry was because Norman developed comic book amnesia. And that to out Norman, he would basically have to out himself as Spider-Man, and Spider-Man's secret identity has been more important to him than just about any of the actual people in his life. After all, keeping the secret of his double life as Spider-Man led to perhaps his greatest sin of all, the reason that Harry is so angry. For you see, once again, one more day gets invoked with a flashback to Harry's resurrection during Brand New Day. Harry says that he didn't become Kindred, Peter made him Kindred. And it's for all those reasons and more that Kindred plans to destroy everything that Peter loves. But before things can escalate too quickly though, once again, Mary Jane plays mediator in this one, stepping between the two. Not at all unlike actually the framing from when she stepped between Peter and Mephisto. She says that if Kindred really wants to destroy Peter and his life, then he should kill her. Which is a hell of a gamble, but actually a pretty interesting choice too, as Mary Jane also invokes the night that Harry as the Green Goblin took her to the top of the bridge that Gwen died on. Harry said that night that they were friends and that he would never hurt her, and now it basically seems like Mary Jane is calling his bluff here and now in a really ballsy move. It's left perhaps a little open-ended over whether or not Harry would actually go through with killing Mary Jane, but the choice is ultimately taken from him as Norman returns as the Green Goblin. Norman, of course, had riddled out that his son was Kindred long before anyone else did back when Kindred came to talk to him at Ravencroft Asylum. It was because of that that Norman had been planning and preparing for just this moment. Harry is naturally furious that once again his overbearing, over-controlling father is inserting himself in what was supposed to be his great plan, and he doesn't even know why Norman cares so much about whether or not Spider-Man and his friends live or die. And I gotta take my hat off to Nick Spencer on this one, because the Green Goblin's response is truly perfect. Because, you impudent child, they're mine. They've always been mine. And it's after that things go positively nuts. Norman throws some pumpkin bombs which end up exploding. Mary Jane gets caught in the blast, and it's left open-ended whether or not she lived or died. But more importantly than that, it's at this moment Kindred's crypt ends up getting raided by Kingpin and his private security force, as Norman had actually cut a backroom deal with Wilson Fisk. Kindred actually coming to Fisk first to try and threaten him to stay out of his affair, so naturally the Kingpin wants some revenge on him here and now, and it's at that point the comic comes to a close. And so that was The Amazing Spider-Man issue number 55, everybody, and I gotta say, this is some good old-fashioned comic book soap operatics going on here. If you're a longtime comic reader or Spider-Man fan, I think you're gonna feel really rewarded by all the deep cuts and references, and even if you're not, I think Nick Spencer does a good job educating you and getting you up to speed on everything that's going on. It's really cool to see the Kingpin return here at this late hour when we stop and consider that Kindred had actually messed with him very early on in this Nick Spencer run, and for a second there I thought they had forgotten about it, but clearly they didn't. I think we're also officially through the looking glass now. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, this story has to end with Peter actually being told about what he did during One More Day, the deal with Mephisto, and what that's gonna mean for him, as Kindred is now officially and ostensibly the monster that his choices created. Overall, I think I'd feel comfortable giving this one a 9 out of 10. This was just a good, solid read.
Hey there everyone, it's your old pal Cave Jewel, and if you're seeing me right now, that means you watched to the end of the video, which I am very appreciative of. It really helps drive engagement and retention and all that other good YouTube stuff. So does liking and commenting. Wink, wink. If you like my content too, you should check out my Patreon page. We just redid all the tiers, so there's a ton of great rewards. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month, and well, it would just really help me out. It's never expected, but always appreciated. So until next time everyone, I've been Cave Joel, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.